This video is about one of the few interesting things that happened to me. Furthermore, since it's a story, I'll be telling it in story format. Descriptive dialogue, quotations that signify speech, things like that. If you don't want to hear that, leave this video's page and get on with your life. Now that that's out of the way, I'll start. When I was 11, my parents drove my brothers and me to California in order to spend our summer vacation with my aunts. The ride was pleasant. The motion of the vehicle soothed me enough to lull me to sleep. I didn't even bat an eye until the car pulled into my aunt's driveway. Aside from groggily greeting my aunt, I barely remember anything that happened afterwards. However, that's not as important as what happened the following morning. The next morning, or that morning if you prefer, my parents woke me up at approximately 6 o'clock. They pushed me through my morning routine. I was half asleep through the entire process, and I remained so until I entered my parents' minivan. A short car ride later, my father parked the vehicle in the parking lot of a harbor. I eagerly jumped out of the car, only to find myself in my mother's iron grip as we walked to the nearest dock. The dock was beautiful. In my young and naive mind, the dilapidated boats anchored there were among the most graceful and stupendous I've ever seen. I heard the seagulls harping all around me. I detected the faint scent of fish as I saw some men walking along the dock with their catch. I couldn't help but feel a sense of serenity as I walked through that wonderland of shore life. When we arrived in front of one of the boats, my mother knelt down and told me, "See that boat right there? You and your dad are going out into the ocean on it to fish." My heart skipped a beat. I was going to fish in the sea, and my then altruistic personality led me to believe that I was going to enjoy every single minute of it. Before I had time to experience any more feelings, my mother politely demanded that I give her a hug before I left. I immediately gave her a short hug and hurriedly sped onto the deck of that tiny boat, intending to fully explore the craft. I was so busy examining the boat, I didn't even think about waving back at my mom until she had almost disappeared into the horizon. When I wasn't able to see the shoreline any longer, I grabbed my fishing rod and some bait and sat down in the chair next to my dad. For what seemed like hours, I anxiously waited for a fish to take hold of my line, but none came. As a result of this, I became extremely bored. "The fish aren't biting at all," I droned. "Are you sure they even come here?" "Well, the captain told us that this squid is supposed to attract all sorts of fish," my dad said while attaching a slimy, writhing squid to his cruel, sharp hook. "In that case," I remarked, "the fish should be jumping out of the water by now. Hey, Dad, can you get me a soda?" "Coming right up, son. See the format right here?" After I watched my father disappear into the cafe, I turned my attention to the calm, rolling waves. I watched each wave disappear into another, only for a new one to take its place. I heard the relaxing, lapping sound that can only be produced by a peaceful sea becoming acquainted with a small commercial vessel. I smelled the salt of the sea and felt the cool, crisp Pacific breeze envelop my body in its welcoming embrace. The more entrenched in these feelings I became, the more surprised I was to see the soda that my father shoved in my face, which means that I almost yelled out in shock at the introduction of the soda. A few minutes of silence passed, which I more than welcomed, considering the fact that I was experiencing trouble returning to reality. The process was disappointing, to say the least. When I was finally able to count to 10 again, I remembered that my dad had told me to keep a firm grasp on my fishing rod. No less than 3 seconds after I had done so, it happened. "Hey," I yelled, "I've got something." I must admit that wasn't what I had planned to say if the situation had ever arisen. I would have preferred to calmly pronounce something cooler like, "Hey, I got a bite." "Matthew, I'm shooting a video!" Anyway, but I'm digressing. At first, I thought I could handle the fish alone, but it soon became clear to me that my preteen body was severely outmatched. As if he had read my mind, my father seized the fishing rod from me and took over my battle. As soon as the rod was out of my hands, I ran to the railing in order to achieve a clearer idea of what the kind of fish my father was up against. What I saw was no fish. 20 feet below the surface of the ocean, a seal was struggling on the other end of my line. When I cried out what I saw, the boat's cook emerged from the gallery and declared, "I'll give you a free soda if you catch that thing." Even at that age, I knew that offer oozed selfishness, and that it in no way bore any resemblance to a fair trade. A seal for a can of soda? That's like offering $1 for the price of 100. As a result of that knowledge, I turned my attention back to the seal and hoped that it would break free. After all, what kind of monster would trade a living creature for a carbonated beverage? My hoping must have had some effect on the situation, because moments after I began it, the seal escaped from the line and delved deeper into the ocean. When my father reeled in the line, I couldn't believe my eyes. Dangling from my hook was the head of a salmon. Did that blow your mind? I have obtained 2 grains of knowledge from that ordeal. One, I discovered that even though practice has some significance, when push comes to shove, that practice can only be utilized correctly if a person has the appropriate mood and train of thought. 2, expect the unexpected. As Forrest Gump's mother adequately put it, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. Thanks, Matthew, for interrupting me.